Teresa Momberg designs the most beautiful stamp sets for making a scene, and By the Sea too is no exception. Today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you how to create an easy background that looks like a watercolored masterpiece that you can use as a backdrop for creating your own beach scene with this new set. Let me show you the tools and products you need for this technique. First, you're going to need some re-inkers, and I'm using a few of the Gina Designs re-inkers. I'm using the Bubblegum Pink, the Honey Mustard, Sweet Mango, and Turquoise Sea. Now, this technique can be used with other re-inkers you may already have in your collection, or you can use water-based markers for this technique, and the results will be a little bit more muted, but still very pretty. So everywhere that I use ink, you can try using markers if you don't want to use re-inkers. Then you're also going to need a water brush if you're not using markers, and I'm using the Niji water brush, and I've added some water into the canister, so this one's ready to go. I also have a little mini mister, and this is filled with water as well, and this is going to give me an extra little burst of water on top of the color once I've mixed it all together. Then you're going to need some stamps, and I'm using these beautiful Adirondack chairs from the new By the Sea 2 stamp set. I'm also using the seagulls, and I'm using the greeting that says thinking of you. I'm also going to use an extra acrylic block, and this is going to be my working block for my re-inkers ink. You can also use a glass dish or some other kind, maybe a plastic stamp box that your Stamp TV kit came in, anything like that that's not porous and won't absorb the ink and will allow it to stay sitting on top and mixing with water. Now, I'm going to use a piece of acetate, and you have lots of pieces of acetate in your stamp collection if you have any of our clear stamps. Our clear stamps come on a piece of clear acetate. So I removed all of my stamps from this and put them on the binder sheet that comes with the stamp set, and this one I'm going to use for this technique. And this technique actually has a name. It's called Smackin' Acetate. You're also going to need some cardstock, and for this card I am using some of the Gina Designs white cardstock. I'm using the heavy base weight for this technique because once you hit this piece of cardstock with water, it is going to curl a little bit, and you get less curling with our heavy base weight cardstock than you do our layering weight. Plus, it's easier to flatten out once you adhere this to your card base. I'm also going to use some black onyx cardstock and some turquoise sea cardstock. So let's begin by adding a little bit of the bubblegum pink re-inker to the acrylic block. Now you don't need a lot, just a drop or two will be plenty, like that. And then I always like to start my water brush on a piece of paper towel just to make sure that the water is flowing from the brush, and I can feel that. There we go, you can see the water's coming out nicely. So now I'm going to add a little bit of water into that ink, and I'm going to start scribbling ink over the top portion of this piece of acetate. Now it's a little bit difficult to see, and you want to make sure that it's at least as wide as your card base, as your card panel is. So now I'm going to add my next color, and it's real easy to clean the brush. You just squeeze water into it, and that ink will come out enough that it won't mess up your next color. So I'm going to use some Sweet Mango in here. Mix it with a little bit of water. And I'm going to add some of that right in with that bubblegum pink. There. Clean that up until that's running clear. My next color is going to be some turquoise sea, so I'll need a drop of that. And as you can see, you don't need much ink for this at all, so you can make several panels at once and then just put them away for a time when you're going to use them. There's my turquoise sea. Clean that up. And my last color is going to be some honey mustard. Now another great color for this technique, if you have any of the Memento re-inkers, the desert sand is a great color for this particular project, but I also like the honey mustard. And so I'm going to add that in here just a little bit, really squeeze a little extra water in there and tap on it. Okay, so now I have all of my colors laid out onto that piece of acetate. Now I'm going to give it one more little burst of water. I always like to start the mister first somewhere else just to make sure that it's spraying smoothly and not too gloppy. And I'm going to do a couple little sprays onto that panel. And then I'm going to take my piece of white cardstock and lay it right on top of that panel and press all around on it. Now you will get some ink on your fingers, so if you don't like messy fingers, you might want to wear a pair of kitchen plastic gloves or something like that for this part, because it can get a little bit messy, but I don't mind. That's part of the fun, is getting a little bit messy. And there is my background. I'm going to let that dry for a second. Now this can easily be rinsed right under water, under your sink, and then all of that excess ink can be wiped away. It'll come up nice and clear, and you'll be able to put that back over your clear stamps with no problem at all. So that won't hurt that at all. Okay, so if you are in a hurry, you can take your heat tool and you can dry this with a little blast from the heat tool. Give that a second. Now, in the meantime, because it's not wet on the back, I'm going to adhere this panel to my black onyx panel, and then I'll mount the whole panel onto that turquoise sea card base. Now I do like to use a little bit of extra mono adhesive when I'm doing anything like heavy watercoloring or a background like this, because it does wrinkle the cardstock, and by adding that extra tape you can really make sure that it's flattened out everywhere on that piece of cardstock. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, so before, well, I might as well, I'll wait and put it on the card base later. So now my next step is going to be to grab that black onyx ink, and now I'm going to stamp the Adirondack chairs on what I like to think is my sandy part of the card. And don't worry about being perfectly accurate. It's okay if it's a little bit off. Remember, this is a creative project, and so you kind of have that creative license to do things that maybe aren't exactly the way they are in nature, but sure look pretty. So there's my two Adirondack chairs sitting on the beach, looking out over onto that beautiful ocean with that orange and pink colored sky. Now I'm going to add some seagulls flying in the sky. I'll put them up here like that. And then I'm going to add my greeting, and that is the thinking of you. I popped this on the block, but I think it's a little crooked, so I'm just going to lay it down and re-adhere it. There we go. And I will add the thinking of you right up here, like that. And now this whole pretty little scene can go on my card base. I did grab a Copic marker here. This is the E55 Light Camel. And I am going to color the Adirondack chairs. Now, the ink is still going to show through, so these chairs are going to be almost a little aged looking, but I like the way that looks, and it does distinguish them a little bit more from the ocean that we created. So I'm just going to color that whole thing in. And I love the way when you blend these colors together that it gets that kind of rusty patina look to it. I'll do this part. And that also distinguishes the chairs a little bit from the sand. And this isn't really about Copic marker, fancy Copic marker work. This is more about just adding some tone over the chairs, so you don't have to be real fancy about the way you color it, worrying about shading and things like that, because you won't get real accurate shading anyway because you're stamping over so much color that's already there. So there are the pretty little chairs waiting for you at the beach. Now I'm going to adhere this panel right on top of my card base. And this is a great card because there's nothing bulky about it. You can slip a message inside and pop it in the mail, and you don't have to worry about any additional postage or anything. It's like a little watered color masterpiece there. And there is my finished card project. You can use other color combinations to create the look of different types of terrain. Try using browns and deep greens for mountain scenes, or use purple and oranges for other interesting sunsets. And by mixing and matching Teresa's scene-making sets together, the possibilities are endless.